Confidence is not a performance, and it's not something you find in the mirror after success. It's not built by applause or affirmed by compliments. Real confidence is quiet, rooted, unshaken by storms or the noise of the world. The Stoics knew this long before confidence became a modern buzzword. They understood that the strongest version of a human being is the one who has mastered himself. And to master yourself, you must know yourself, not as you wish to be, not as the world tries to define you, but as you truly are, stripped of ego, detached from approval, anchored in values. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire of his time, yet he reminded himself daily that he was mortal, fallible, and subject to the same human frailty as every other man. That humility didn't make him weak, it made him clear. Confidence isn't the denial of limitations. It's the courage to stand firm despite them. To walk the path of Stoicism is to understand that the world will never offer stable ground. One day, people will praise you. The next, they will criticize you. One day you win. The next, you lose. And if your confidence rides on outcomes, then you'll never be steady. You'll always be a slave to circumstance. That's why Stoicism begins with the concept of control. You do not control events. You control your response. You do not control what others say. You control how you act. You do not control the future. You control your effort today. And when your sense of self is built on the solid ground of internal control, nothing from the outside can shake it. That is the beginning of unshakable confidence, not power over others, but power over self. The Stoics trained for adversity, not because they were pessimists, but because they understood the nature of life. They practiced voluntary discomfort, deliberately placing themselves in situations where they could train their minds to remain calm. Seneca would fast, sleep on the floor, wear rough clothing, not to punish himself, but to prepare. He would ask, "Is this what I feared? Is this the thing that caused so much anxiety?" And in doing so, he dismantled the illusion. The fear was greater than the reality. And when you expose yourself to discomfort intentionally, you strip it of its ability to control you. Confidence grows in the soil of exposure and resilience. When you've endured, when you've tasted hardship, when you've survived loss and still held to your principles, there's a quiet strength that emerges. You no longer bluff your way through life. You no longer hope things go your way. You become the kind of person who will rise either way. Epictetus, who began life as a slave, showed that external conditions do not define internal strength. His chains didn't break his mind. His status didn't affect his philosophy. He spoke about choice, choosing to remain composed, choosing to live by virtue, choosing to pursue wisdom over reaction. He said that wealth is not evil, nor is poverty. They are conditions. What matters is how you meet them. That's the power of Stoicism. It detaches confidence from privilege. It gives every human being access to power, not by lifting them above struggle, but by transforming their mindset within it. So many chase confidence through appearance, performance, acquisition. But Stoicism says, begin here with thought, with reason, with the recognition that your judgments about the world shape your experience of it. Once you understand this, you're no longer held hostage by opinions or outcomes. You become a force of nature, consistent, present, grounded. Confidence also comes from clarity. The Stoics believed that virtue was the highest good, and that everything else, money, fame, comfort, was secondary. When you align your life with a purpose beyond ego, you walk with direction. You speak with conviction. You act without second guessing. Why? because your compass isn't changing every time someone criticizes you or disagrees with you. You know who you are. You know what you stand for. That doesn't mean you're perfect. The Stoics didn't strive for perfection. They strove for progress. They reviewed their days, acknowledged where they failed, and committed to doing better. Confidence isn't about never making mistakes. It's about not hiding from them. It's the ability to look yourself in the eye, accept what you see, and still move forward. That kind of honesty builds a foundation nothing can shake. The modern world often confuses confidence with arrogance. Arrogance is loud because it's hollow. It needs to be seen. It feeds off attention. Confidence is quiet because it's full. It needs nothing. It doesn't crave validation. It rests in awareness. The Stoics knew this distinction. That's why they warned against chasing praise. Praise is intoxicating. It makes you feel important, but it also makes you dependent. The minute you need applause to feel worthy, you've given your power away. And power given away is rarely returned. Stoicism teaches you to anchor your confidence in something unchanging: your values, your reason, your discipline. These are not affected by trends, gossip, or rejection. These are yours always. Fear is the enemy of confidence, but fear isn't always loud. Sometimes fear disguises itself as hesitation, overthinking, perfectionism. The Stoics faced fear head on. They didn't try to eliminate it through avoidance. They transcended it through action. They knew that fear is often a signpost. It points toward the thing we must do. Avoiding it gives it power. Confronting it dissolves it. When you face fear, not recklessly, but with intention, you chip away at its hold. With every act of courage, no matter how small, you expand your capacity. You begin to trust yourself. That's what confidence really is. Self-trust. The belief that you will act with courage regardless of what comes. That you will show up with integrity in every moment. Not because you're guaranteed success, but because you refuse to be ruled by doubt. The Stoics also believed in impermanence. Memento mori, remember, you must die. This wasn't meant to depress, but to clarify. When you understand that your time is limited, you stop wasting it. You stop hesitating. You stop pretending. You become direct, honest, grateful, alive. Death strips away the unnecessary. It makes you ask, what am I doing with my time? Am I acting in fear or in courage? Am I building a life I admire or performing for others? Confidence grows when your actions align with your truth. When you are no longer playing a role, but living from your core. And once you've tasted that alignment, it's very hard to go back to anything else. Because it feels real, because it feels like freedom, because it feels like you. Confidence is not something that arrives all at once or something you're born with. It is built deliberately over time through choices, habits, and perspective. The Stoics believed that confidence is not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. They understood that real power comes not from dominating others, but from mastering yourself, your thoughts, and your reaction. Stoic confidence is not loud or boastful. It's rooted in deep calm, in quiet discipline, in the steady knowledge that you are in control of yourself even when the world is in chaos. This kind of confidence can't be faked, and it can't be taken away by failure or rejection or criticism, because it isn't based on anything external. It's based on clarity, on virtue, on the simple but powerful truth that the only thing that really belongs to you is your own mind to build this kind of confidence. The Stoic first understands what is within his control and what is not. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us and some things are not. That clear distinction is the starting point for peace and power. You don't control what others think of you. You don't control the past or the future. You don't control outcomes, but you do control your actions, your effort, your attitude, your principles. When your identity is built around what you can control, your confidence becomes untouchable. It's no longer dependent on likes, on applause, on recognition. You can win or lose and still remain composed. You can be misunderstood and still act with integrity. You can be doubted by the world and still know exactly who you are. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, filled his private journal not with declarations of greatness, but with reminders to stay humble, to remain rational, to act according to nature. He didn't need to inflate his ego or prove anything to anyone. His strength came from inner clarity. He practiced self-examination, reminding himself constantly that death was near, that status was meaningless, that virtue was the only true good. When you strip away everything temporary and focus on what is permanent, confidence becomes a byproduct. When you understand that even emperors die, that empires fall, that all things pass, you stop relying on the temporary for your identity. Confidence also grows when you embrace discomfort rather than avoid it. The Stoics practiced voluntary hardship, fasting, sleeping on the ground, going without luxuries, not to punish themselves, but to train their minds. Seneca, a man of great wealth, regularly reminded himself that everything could be taken away. He would ask himself, "Is this the condition I feared?" He discovered that much of what we fear is based on illusion. When you face discomfort on your own terms, it loses its power over you. You stop dreading pain, rejection, or failure because you've trained for it. You've rehearsed it. You've proven to yourself that you can handle it. That's the root of true confidence, not in the belief that life will be easy, but in the belief that you will remain strong no matter how hard it gets. The Stoics did not confuse confidence with arrogance. Arrogance is built on comparison. It says, "I'm better than you." Confidence, in the Stoic sense, doesn't need comparison. It says, "I am grounded in who I am." It's not reactive, it's reflective. You don't need to speak over others. You don't need to dominate the conversation. You listen. You observe. You choose your words with intention. You move with purpose, not with the need to impress. That level of self-possession is rare in a world that values noise and performance. And that's exactly why it's powerful. Another pillar of Stoic confidence is the commitment to virtue over ego. The Stoics believed that confidence should be anchored in how you live, not in what you achieve. Are you honest even when it's hard? Are you disciplined even when no one is watching? Are you just even when it costs you something? If you can answer yes to those questions, then you have something far more valuable than success or recognition. You have integrity, and confidence rooted in integrity doesn't crumble under pressure. It doesn't collapse in the face of criticism. It stands because it knows that it has nothing to hide. Fear is one of the greatest enemies of confidence. But the Stoics didn't believe in suppressing fear. They believed in mastering it. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our opinions about them. If you're afraid of public speaking, it's not the crowd that's terrifying. It's your belief that they will judge you, that their judgment means something about your worth. If you're afraid to fail, it's not the act of failing. It's the belief that failure defines you. When you question those beliefs, when you challenge the opinions that fuel your fear, you start to reclaim your power. You begin to act with freedom, not because you're fearless, but because fear no longer dictates your decisions. Memento mori. Remember that you must die. This reminder wasn't meant to create despair, but to sharpen focus. The Stoics used the awareness of mortality to filter what mattered. If you only had a limited time to live, would you spend it worrying about what strangers think? Would you spend it chasing approval? Would you hide your voice, your truth, your purpose? Or would you live with urgency, with honesty, with depth? Confidence grows when you start to see time as sacred, when you realize that hesitation is expensive, That silence in the face of truth is a form of self-betrayal. When you remember that your life is happening now, and every moment is a chance to show up as your highest self, the Stoic also practices detachment, not from life, but from the outcome. You do your work, you give your best, and then you let go. You don't tie your peace to the results. You don't base your identity on winning or losing. You base it on whether you showed up with full presence, with full effort, with full integrity. This is liberating. It means you can take risks without being paralyzed by the fear of failure. It means you can speak honestly without fearing rejection. It means you can live boldly because your confidence is not held hostage by outcome. But built on intention confidence, the Stoic way, is not a destination. It's a daily practice. It's in the morning reflections where you ask yourself who you want to be. It's in the difficult conversations where you choose courage over comfort. It's in the quiet evenings where you review your actions not with shame, but with honesty and commitment to growth. Every small act of discipline adds a brick to your inner fortress. Every moment of restraint, every act of virtue, every intentional decision is part of the architecture of confidence. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be perfect to be strong. You don't need to be fearless to be brave. The Stoic path to unshakable confidence is walked in silence, through discipline, through resilience, through clarity. It's built not on the shifting sand of status or validation, but on the solid ground of character, and once you've built it, nothing outside you can take it away. Confidence, when examined through the lens of Stoicism, is not a matter of personality or performance, but a matter of alignment between reason and action. The Stoics believed that a human being reaches their highest potential not through dominance or pride, but through virtue and inner peace. They didn't see confidence as something to be projected to impress others, but rather as a quiet strength that emerges when one lives in harmony with their principles. At the core of Stoic philosophy is the understanding that the only true good lies in our character, and everything else, reputation, wealth, appearance, even health, is secondary. When your sense of self is no longer tied to those external factors, what remains is a kind of unwavering clarity, a confidence that is both durable and free from dependence. The Stoics were not sheltered from pain or failure. In fact, many of them lived through war, exile, slavery, political downfall, and illness. Yet, they were among the most composed individuals in history. This was not by accident. It was the result of deliberate mental training, self-discipline, and the pursuit of wisdom. Epictetus, born into slavery, taught that true freedom is found not in changing the world around you, but in mastering how you respond to it. He insisted that we are disturbed not by things, but by the views we take of them. This insight is the foundation of Stoic confidence. When you recognize that external events cannot harm your soul unless you allow them to, fear begins to dissolve. When fear loses its grip, confidence has room to grow every day. We are presented with opportunities to choose our mindset. The Stoics prepared themselves for life's uncertainties by rehearsing adversity, not to become pessimistic, but to become unbreakable. Seneca advised that we should, from time to time, live as if we had lost everything, eating plain food, wearing simple clothes, and reminding ourselves that the luxuries we cling to are not necessary for happiness. This voluntary discomfort isn't about suffering for the sake of suffering. It's about creating psychological flexibility. When you've proven to yourself that you can thrive without your comforts, you develop a kind of inner insurance. You don't fear losing what you've already trained yourself to do without. You become less fragile. Your self-belief is no longer dependent on what you possess, but on who you've become. Marcus Aurelius, ruling the Roman Empire during times of plague, war, and betrayal, found strength not in control over others, but in control over himself. His meditations reflect a constant internal dialogue about humility, duty, mortality, and self-erection. He reminded himself that it is within our power to choose a calm mind, to remain indifferent to the opinions of others, and to rise each day committed to virtue. He did not define confidence by how loudly one could speak, or how assertively one could act, but by how consistently one could live according to truth, even in silence. This inner consistency, this harmony between thought and behavior, is the essence of Stoic confidence. It's tempting to think of confidence as a trait one either has or doesn't. But the Stoics would argue it's a practice, a discipline, like courage or temperance. You don't wait for it to appear, you cultivate it by acting in accordance with your values, regardless of how you feel in the moment. When fear is present, you act anyway. When doubt arises, you consult reason, not impulse. Over time, these repeated decisions shape your identity. You begin to trust yourself, not because you always succeed, but because you always return to principle. Confidence, then, is not about certainty in outcome, but about certainty in self in modern life. Many suffer from what the Stoics would call misplaced attachment. We attach our self-worth to accolades, appearance, popularity, performance. These attachments are unstable. The Stoics urge us to detach from what we cannot control, not because those things are evil, but because relying on them for confidence is building on sand. Today you may win, tomorrow you may lose. But if your peace is built on your efforts, your virtue, your wisdom, things no one can take from you, then you are steady in all seasons. You can walk into a room without needing attention, speak truth without fearing reaction, and face hardship without collapsing. There is also a misconception that confidence requires the absence of emotion. The Stoics didn't suppress feelings. They examined them, questioned them, and put them in their proper place. Anger, envy, fear, pride, these are reactions, not truths. A Stoic acknowledges the feeling but refuses to be ruled by it. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, the confident person does not avoid confrontation or discomfort, but engages with them calmly, understanding that the emotional storm is temporary and that rational control is always available. This emotional clarity is rare and powerful in a reactive world. Memento mori. Remember, you must die is not a gloomy concept, but a liberating one. The Stoics used the awareness of mortality to sharpen focus and awaken gratitude. When you remember that your time is finite, you stop postponing your life. You stop waiting for confidence to magically appear. You realize the cost of inaction, the pain of regret, and the gift of the present moment. This urgency fuels the Stoic to act now, to speak now, to live now. You begin to see that it is not confidence that leads to action, but action that builds confidence. Every decision made in line with virtue, no matter how small, reinforces your self-trust. And trust in yourself, when built on principle and repetition, becomes indestructible. There is also great confidence in silence. The Stoics did not believe in proving themselves through words, but through behavior. They did not need to be praised to feel valued, nor did they fear being misunderstood. They knew that living well was the best argument, and that time reveals character. In a noisy world, the one who speaks less and listens more often holds the most control, not over others, but over himself. There is a kind of sacred power in presence, in restraint, in steadiness. The Stoic moves not to impress, but to fulfill duty. He doesn't chase attention because he already possesses attention, his own. He has watched himself, tested himself, disciplined himself. That internal surveillance leads to internal mastery. The Stoic doesn't aim to be better than others. He aims to be better than he was yesterday. He competes with himself, challenges himself, forgives himself, and demands more of himself. This self-focus doesn't isolate him from the world. It strengthens his ability to serve it. Confidence built on Stoic principles is not about self-promotion, but about contribution. You become the person who can be counted on, who doesn't panic under pressure, who stays calm in chaos, who speaks when it matters and remains silent when it's wise. It is not the external voice that builds confidence, but the internal dialogue you have every day. When your inner voice becomes firm, compassionate, honest, and wise, it guides you through difficulty without panic. The Stoics teach that we all have access to this inner guide. It's not reserved for the elite, the brave, the talented. It's available to anyone willing to live deliberately. Every day is a test. Every moment is a choice. Every response is an opportunity to build or betray the foundation of who you are becoming. And when you choose integrity over comfort, wisdom over impulse, action over hesitation, you become unshakable without needing to shout it. You carry yourself with the quiet certainty of one who knows that strength is not in appearances but in self-possession.